Surrounded by his cabinet, US President Donald Trump described Somalis living in America as garbage. The comments have been widely condemned, but not by his supporters. So what are the implications, not just in the US, but elsewhere? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Adrian Finighan. Speaking to his cabinet at its final gathering of the year, US President Donald Trump launched into an attack on America's Somali community, describing them as garbage. It was no slip of the tongue. A day later, in front of reporters, Trump again targeted Somalis, accusing them, without evidence, of destroying the country. There's been strong and widespread criticism of his remarks as racist and sinister, but supporters have backed him. The White House press secretary described his words as amazing and an epic moment. They struck a new tone, language never before uttered by a US president in the modern era, according to one leading academic. So, what are the implications for the Somali community and other immigrant groups? Could Trump's comments have an impact on what's acceptable in public debate, not just in the US, but beyond? We'll discuss all that with our guests shortly, but first, a report from Alexandra Byers.
We have a tremendous bench.
The U.S. president lashing out at more than 250,000 people of Somali heritage who call America home.
I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you. Okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country.
But he didn't stop there.
We're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage.
Congresswoman Omar was born in Mogadishu and granted asylum in the U.S. She's an outspoken critic of Donald Trump.
The president has always had very bigoted, xenophobic, Islamophobic comments when it comes to, people who are of Muslim faith or people who are black. We've seen him call African nations as holes, and so it's not really surprising.
In Somalia, the insults caused shock.
My view of the US and living there has changed dramatically. I never thought a president, especially in his second term, would speak so harshly. Because of this, I have no plans to travel to the US.
Many Somalis fled civil war in the 1990s. Those who reached the U.S. were granted protected status, which is set to expire next year. But President Trump is threatening to revoke it entirely. He's also ordered immigration agents to track down undocumented Somalis. About 260,000 people of Somali descent are living in California, Washington, Ohio, and Minnesota. The largest community is in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, about 84,000, most of whom are American citizens. More than half of Minnesota's Somali community were born in the U.S. Among those who weren't, the vast majority, 87%, are naturalized U.S. citizens.
My daughter asked me, why us? Why is he picking? Why is he, single us out? Why is he calling us garbage? How do you answer something like that?
This community is full of fear. They don't want to come out, and a lot of businesses are closed. They are not able to come and work and pay their rent. So I don't know what's going to happen.
During his outburst, President Trump also referred to an investigation into dozens of Somali-Americans accused of being involved in a scheme to defraud the Minnesota state government of more than $1 billion. But many say it's unfairly damaged the reputation of the entire community, rather than the small group accused of the fraud. Alexandra Byers, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests. Joining us from St. Paul, Minnesota is Samakab Hussein. He's a Somali-American and a Minnesota State House representative. Joy Chaney is in Portland, Oregon. She's a lawyer and Democratic political strategist. And from Washington, D.C., we're joined by Eric Ham, a political analyst and former US Congressional staffer. Welcome to you all. Joy, let's start with you. What do you make of this? Why does Trump appear to be so fixated on the Somali community in particular? And what's going on with Ilhan Omar? Why is he so fixated on her?
He's targeting Ilhan Omar because she's a person who's speaking out against him, and many people are. But she's a person speaking out against him who is of black descent, Somali descent. She's someone who is someone that he can project all of his bigotry on. She's an easy target, and she's incredibly effective, right? So should consider it an honor that the president would target her, because that means she's breaking through, and she is a resonating voice in Congress. And so he's targeting her. He's also targeting her because he needs a distraction. And when he makes these vitriolic, bigoted, racist, ethnically biased, ignorant comments, it does get everyone's attention. It also hurts people, so I don't want to dismiss it and act like it's not important. It is, but it is first and foremost a distraction, and then you get the convenient benefit of creating an example or out of Ilhan Omar and attacking her. And he thinks that inspires his base.
Eric, we'll talk about his base in a few moments, but first of all, what is your take on what Trump thinks he's doing? I mean, his language is hardly befitting of his office as the leader of the most powerful country of the world. He's the president of the United States, for goodness sake. What he says about Somalis and what he's previously said about immigrants in general, would that kind of remark have been acceptable in political discourse 10 years ago, 20 years ago? If it wasn't then, why is it now?
Well, actually, I would say it was actually accepted 10 years ago. Donald Trump is actually in his second term. And we have to remember, we go back to his first term. We had the Muslim ban that the president enacted. We had his infamous comment calling African nations S-hole countries. And even during his first term as well, we know that there was always a war of words between President Trump, Ilhan Omar, AOC, and other members of Congress. And Donald Trump has targeted the Somali community in Minnesota since coming to power. And I don't think this is something that's new. This is something that is actually ongoing. And right now, what we're saying, while the president is lashing out specifically at this community, this is just the latest community du jour that the president is going after. We know that the ICE raids that the president has certainly been aggressive at implementing have targeted communities from the Latino community to now we know if you go to Michigan, a key battleground state, there in Metro Detroit, the Arab American community in Dearborn, Michigan, is now being targeted as well. So what we're seeing from the president is a list of key communities, particularly communities of Black and brown communities that the president is going after. What we're seeing in terms of the incendiary language from the president in the cabinet meeting, that's just something that certainly raises one particular community to the top of the list that we know the president will certainly use all resources of the government to go after and weaponize his powers against them.
But Eric, to what extent is the president able to get away with saying things that others couldn't? I mean, if the remarks had been made by Vice President Vance, for instance, would there have been more pushback, do you think? Why can Trump get away with it where perhaps others wouldn't?
Well, certainly President Trump has this magic elixir, this magic power that allows him to tap into that MAGA base where that language is seen as a rallying point for the president, and he continues to use it. However, we're seeing that power, that base now is beginning to wane. In fact, if you go back to April, already the president has lost more than 13% of the MAGA base. So where Donald Trump at one time enjoyed more than 90% approval from Republicans, that number is beginning to dwindle. And we're seeing how it's playing out with a major crack in his base, particularly in Congress, where a number of Republicans have already announced that they are going to be retiring or outright leaving in record numbers. We've already seen that from one of his most ardent and loyal foot soldiers, someone who certainly went to battle against Ilhan Omar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has announced that she's leaving. And oh, by the way, we know President Trump has also turned his fire on her. So Donald Trump recognizes that there is a rabid base that he has that will go after people, even those who have been part of the MAGA tent. And he knows how to weaponize it. And so what we're seeing right now is this is becoming a law of diminishing returns. And the president, given that this is the only tool that he has in his toolkit, which is division, chaos, and more of the same, he's attempting to just now trying to ratchet up. But now what we're seeing here is it's having a diminishing effect, at least politically, for the president. And that is actually playing out in many of the elections that we're seeing, as well as what it pertains for the midterm elections in 2026.
Samakab, Hussein, how worried are the American Somali community right now after Trump's comments? We heard a little bit about them in Alexander's report a few moments ago. Tell us more about the Somali-American community, particularly there in St. Paul.
Thank you for having me here, and I'm honored to join this conversation. There's a lot of chaos and confusion in the state of Minnesota. And Trump, that's one thing that he wanted, is to divide the community and the people of Minnesota. And we know that Minnesotan Somali-American are significant part of our society. They are working hard communities. There is, yes, but majority Somali-American in Minnesota are citizens. And there's a few people that are worried, and we are trying to do the best we can. But his game is to political divide Minnesotan. And it's working out for other states, but not the state of Minnesota, because hundreds and thousands of people, Minnesotan, stood up with the Somali-Americans, say this is unacceptable. And they are pushing back and saying they are happy to be neighborhood, family, and friends and co-workers. And there's a lot of people that protecting immigrants under the state of Minnesota, and people are united. One thing that Trump is trying to do is, why is he targeting Ilhan Omar and other Congress, is because the midterm election is coming up next year, and he's trying to bully everybody, and he's trying to see the Somali-American not to come out and vote, because 100% usually in the state of Minnesota, they do come out and support Democrat. So he's trying to push back. This is a tactic that he has been using for many years. And it's a time that we need to push back this racism and division in our state and in our country. And just to let you know that the Somali-American, that's contributed in the state of Minnesota big time.
Okay, Eric was saying that there is already evidence of some pushback, and Joy, you were saying a few minutes ago that you feel that comments like the ones that Trump has made don't actually reflect his genuine personal views, or perhaps they do, but they're more calculated to distract or wind up his political base through provocation. I mean, does that distinction even matter, given the dangerousness of the comments?
Well, let's be clear. I don't know what his personal views are. All I can do is trust what he says. I do believe they're his personal views based on what he's saying. Donald Trump, as my co-panelists have said, has made, racist rhetoric his entire career, not just his career in politics. But that aside, it's still a distraction. It is a distraction tactic meant to distract from the other things, what's happening with the Venezuela ships, what's happening at the Department of War, I guess now that we're calling it Department of Defense, the failed economic policies, the fact that he might be overturned in regards with his tariffs in the Supreme Court, the fact that Americans, hundreds of thousands of Americans, are going to have an increase in their healthcare costs next year by thousands of dollars individually. He has a problem right now. And so when he has that problem, instead of talking about that and addressing things head on, he, of course, goes and attacks a community. And in this case, it's the Somali community, but he rotates and he gets around to everyone. And this is a lesson we're all learning. If you think it's not going to happen to you, it will eventually happen to you when it's convenient. He is completely disrespecting the Oval Office. It's awful that he's using this rhetoric and comments. I can tell you all of those cabinet members likely felt like they had to clap, but they were not in support of what he's saying. Republicans are not in support of what he's saying. Go back and listen to what Marjorie Taylor Greene and other Republicans are starting to say. Instead of focusing on making America great again, whatever he thinks that means, but in lowering costs for people and raising salaries, instead of doing that, what some people sent him to do, he's engaged in bigoted rhetoric that does nothing for his constituents. They don't have any more food on their table. Eggs aren't cheaper. Gas isn't more affordable because he's targeting Somali immigrants to this country and who are citizens. Ilhan Omar has already said this, making it clear there are not enough Somali undocumented immigrants to warrant this kind of response, and they certainly aren't a threat to the United States in any way, shape, or form. He's going to go there. He's going to humiliate himself, as he already is. He's going to target people who are ultimately citizens. They're going to be released. They're going to be frightened. They're going to be scared. He's going to face lawsuits. He might actually, because this is so clearly racial profiling and targeting, have a problem with the Supreme Court. That's going to keep coming up over and over again. He's going to face lawsuit after lawsuit. And honestly, this is what he's cast the Republican Party in.
Okay.
Ultimately, this is going to inspire people to vote. And it's going to inspire more of his members to say, I've had enough. I don't want to have to defend him next year when the Democrats are in charge of the House of Representatives and at this rate on maybe the Senate. I don't want to have to do this. That's where Donald Trump is leading us.
All right. Eric, to what extent is the danger here that with Trump making comments like this, that he somehow shifts the Overton window? He makes the unthinkable thinkable, in that people think that it's okay to make racist comments, to speak out loud thoughts that they would have kept to themselves. The kind of people who would think such things in the first place, are they being emboldened by the president? If it's all right for him to say it, it's all right for me too. Do we risk becoming desensitized to dehumanizing language?
I would say the answer to that question, if we look at the overwhelming evidence, particularly now in terms of where Donald Trump's approval rating is, what we have seen in the most recent off-year elections, the overwhelming answer to that is no. And if you look at where the president is right now, particularly with how much of his base has walked away from him, particularly over the Epstein files. And one area where the president will always go back to is political polarization to ensure that he can not only incite his base, but he's also got to try to gloss over many of those cracks as well. There was a massive pushback in the House, a massive rebuke, in fact, over this issue of Epstein, where you saw a number of Republicans actually support the release of these documents, even when the president did not want that to happen. And so what we're seeing right now from the president is simply par for the course. We can even look at South Africa, where the United States, for the first time in years, actually decided not to participate in the G20 summit. That's a massive, massive move from the United States to remove itself from engaging with the 20 largest economies around the world. And I think what we're continuing to see is how the president is using politics and also some of the most harmful rhetoric to put the United States in a more precarious position. Even as a result, now we know that next year, with the United States overseeing the G20, South Africa has stated they will not participate. And so I think this is becoming increasingly more problematic. And it's also beginning to damage American consumers and their pocketbooks, as we've heard Joy also say. And this is becoming, I think, a situation where it's becoming, again, a law of diminishing returns for the president. It certainly worked and galvanized enormous amount of voters for the president in his first election. But now what we're seeing here is, as election after election occurs, that level of rhetoric is simply not giving the president the support that he wants. And if we just look at the most recent special election in Tennessee, that was a district where President Donald Trump won by 22 points just last year. And already we have seen a 13-point swing in that ruby red district. And that is actually what we're looking at in a number of races already this year, and also possibly what's going to happen next year. And right now, President Donald Trump is trying to find a way to juice up that base, recognizing there is going to be a political problem that he will have and that he will have to pay in terms of the upcoming elections, what could be a clear push and a pull on his political power, not just with his base, but also with the political power that right now he wields with an iron grip, with control over Congress, as well as what we've seen coming out of the Supreme Court.
Samakab, picking up on what Eric was saying there about South Africa in particular, what does Trump's language mean for America's global image, particularly among African nations or Muslim majority nations? I mean, we know that the US's refusal to take part in the G20 in South Africa has been reciprocated by South Africa. But how seriously do nations take his rhetoric, do you think, or do they just brush it off as, oh, that's just Donald Trump?
I mean, a lot of my constituents are very devastated the way our president is spoken about publicly in racial, and at the same time, how embarrassing they feel. They send me letters, they send me emails, they calling me and letting me know that they are with us. And not with this president. A lot of people has voted for him in the past, and now they are regretting that they have voted for President Trump, because he's polishing the value of America, and he is hurting the country the way he's speaking about it. And this is absolutely is unprecedented. We have never seen in entire life while I was living in America to see our president is targeting a small community and open races. It seems like we're going back to 1800s and 1700s in the country, where things like this was allowed, but now is not, because our educators and young Americans and citizens are fed up with Trump and his radical racism, and a lot of the country outside are seeing America, not the America that we used to see. It looks like, as you've seen right now, South Africa are now participating, and there's more country is going to call out and going to do the same thing. All he's doing is division, and President Donald Trump, and that's unacceptable. And we'll try to do the best we can to be united in the state of Minnesota. We are happy to have the largest East African and the largest Somali-American. This state is an immigrant state and makes a lot of majority of the populations are becoming an immigrant. He's feeling fear that he's going to lose midterm elections, and he's trying to do the best he can to divide for our community. But at the same time, I want to...
Very quickly.
Yes, I want to make sure that people that are watching throughout the state of Minnesota, the politicians and Democrats are with you, and they will stand with you. Make sure you just know your rights and participate.
All right. Joy, what precedent is being set here for future political leaders if rhetoric like Trump's is left unchecked? I mean, how can the standard of political discourse be raised again in the future? And what part does the media play in this? Is the media complicit in spreading and normalizing Trump's rhetoric by endlessly replaying it and discussing it even like we are now? Or is full exposure necessary for accountability and change? Can the genie be put back in the bottle?
Well, let me just say this. I think we haven't talked enough about the role of social media here. The fact is, part of our coarsening rhetoric is that we're not talking to each other in person or even engaging in long-form dialogue like this program is doing right now. This is a fantastic program, actually, right now, on the topic, the amount of time you are spending on this. On social media, we're not talking to each other in one person to person, and we're coarsening our language. The things that you can say to people when you don't have to look them in the face has really changed. And so we created almost a Donald Trump, where he's infinitely, a product of that type of environment where he believes he can say whatever he wants to say, and there's no consequence for it, and that's accepted. So social media is certainly part of this. But the other part is, I don't think every politician can get away with it. I think you said before, if J.D. Vance tried this, it would not work the same way. Donald Trump has been unique in being able to get away with it. It doesn't translate to other people. But I do think there has been a coarsening of language that we're all going to have to look at. Our religious institutions are going to have to look at it. Our educational institutions and families to a person are going to have to say, I've got to be careful about what my children are consuming. I've got to say that this type of language is unacceptable. And in some respects, the fact that we're all kind of saying this is a distraction.
Okay.
It doesn't mean to diminish the harm of it, but it does mean to say this is a person who's trying to harm us.
Okay.
He's trying to distract us. He is the wrong party here.
Joy, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Eric, we've got about a minute and a half left. Picking up on what Joy was saying, what do Trump's comments mean for the future of everyday debate among the public, online, in communities, and even among families? I mean, has he put political discourse on a slippery slope? Where should the line be drawn between free political speech and language that incites harm and hatred towards a particular group or community?
Well, let's look at this in more global terms. The United States has always been seen as the global hegemon, and one of its key components of that has been basically being able to sell democracy to the rest of the world. We know that it was Ronald Reagan who said back in the 80s that America is that shining city on the hill. But now what we see here is that city, which was once seen as so open, so welcoming to the rest of the world, and was also the North Star for the rest of the world, particularly in implementing democracy, we now see a president who is moving the United States away from the rest of the world, isolating it even, and also in doing so, continuing to attack the world in terms of its diversity, its culture, and its differences, where the United States and democracy has always been seen as welcoming of that. And because the president is continuing to engage in such incendiary language, what it does is it provides an opening, particularly for this growing and trending authoritarianism that we see around the world, because now the United States is so greatly diminished, and you have the so-called leader of the free world who's actually continuing to move the nation not only away from those key pillars of democracy, but also providing room and openings for other places, other countries to be able to step in. And I think that's becoming increasingly problematic and detrimental, not only for the United States, but more importantly for its own national security.
Okay, there we must end it. Many thanks indeed. Eric Ham, Joy Chaney, I know you want to come back. We're out of time, I'm afraid. And Samakab Hussein. Thanks for watching. You can see the programme again at any time by going to the website. You'll find that at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, join us at our Facebook page. That's at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And of course, you can always join the conversation on X. Our handle there at AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finighan, and the whole team here. Bye-bye for now.